Hello everyone, welcome back to another Java tutorial. Today we are going to be going over Java methods or functions. They're the same thing. Some programming languages call them functions, but in Java they are called methods. So, what are methods? So firstly I'm going to go over something that is in here. So we're not actually going to write anything, but we're going to look at all of this code that we have here. Once we generate a new class, we have a couple of things here to look at. Firstly, we have the class. I'm not going to worry about that in this episode, but we are going to be looking at this. So this is a method, and you can see that the method starts here and it ends here. You can see that there's a little box around it. And then if I click this, so there's a little box here. So this is where it starts and then this is where it ends. So this is called the main method. When this class gets ran, we will look for the class name called main, which will get executed. But let's say we want another method to use. Methods are very useful if you want to use reusable code. So if you don't want to write the same code over and over again, we can use a method. So let's get started. Let's make ourselves a little. Let's make ourselves a little method. So firstly we'll write public. You don't need to worry about what this means. You also don't need to worry what void means. But then let's give it a name. Now also, all methods, a method can't really be inside of a method. So you can see this is one method, but then whenever you create a method, it has to be outside of the method of the main method or any other method, but it still has to be inside of the main class here. So we're gonna put our method right in here. Then we're gonna name it. Let's do get greeting. For example, we'll do get greeting, bracket, and then open and close it. So here we have our very first method. It's called get greeting. Now let's say we want to output something. So let's print out. We'll just print out hello. Now let's say we want to run this code in here that's inside of this method here. The way we'll do that. So we need to somehow call this method. The way we call that method is we just need to give it a, we need just to call the name of the method. So we'll just do get greeting, like this. And you can see, we'll also add the static. I forgot, we also need the static. And yeah, so now we are just calling the method now. If we run this, you can see we print out hello, because the way it works is we have a method here. We call that method by the name, and then when we call this method, it will execute all the code that is inside of that method here, inside of these. And we have the print statement in here, which is hello. Now, I didn't actually explain what the void means, which I will now. Void is basically a return type. If it's void, that means this method will not return anything. We don't want it to return anything. We don't need it to return anything, but let's say we do want it to return something. So let's change this void to a data type that we want to return. So let's say we want to return a string. So we'll just do string. Now you can see we do get an error because we need to add a return statement. So the way we will do this, let's say we have a string and we'll name it, let's just do greeting and we'll do hello. So whenever I call this, I want it to return the greeting hello. The way we'll do that is we'll just do return and the name of our string greeting, like this. So what happens here is we are calling this method here, get greeting, and then we are returning greeting, which is hello. Now we need to do something with this return that we get. So we can store this in another greeting. So methods, we'll do method greeting, we'll name it, and we'll equal it to get greeting. So what happens now is we are calling get greeting, and get greeting is going to return whatever the greeting is, which is hello, and we're going to store it in the meta greeting. So now if we print this out, do meta greeting. So if we run this now, see we get hello, because we are calling get greeting, we are returning the greeting, which is hello, and we are storing that whatever we return inside of meta greeting, and then we can print it out. We don't have to store it in this, so what we can do is we can straight away just call it, and then we can just get greeting. And what this is going to do is we are going to print out whatever we return from this method here, which is greeting. You can run this and you can see we get hello as well. Now let's say we want to pass something in here. So firstly I'm going to go back because I think it's a bit easier to understand. So let's say I want to pass in some kind of information in here. So let's say I want to pass in a string, for example. Or yeah, let's do a string. Let's do a string. So firstly, this is the data type that we are going to pass in. And then we'll do name. This is the name of the greeting type that we're the string of whatever parameter we are going to pass in. Now you can see we are getting an error here because what we need to do in here is, since this method requires a parameter, we need to pass in a parameter. So we can pass in, let's say we have a string and we have a string, let's just do first name, and we can say Bob, right? So we have a string Bob, and let's pass this in here. Now you can see we are getting no more error. So what's happening here is we are calling the get greeting method, but it requires a string to be passed in. So we pass in the string Bob, and now this method can now use that parameter that we passed in, the string Bob. Now we can do something like hello, and then we do a space, and then we do plus, and then we do the name, whatever parameter we passed in, and then we are just going to return that greeting. Then we're just going to set it as a meta greeting and then print it out. You can see we get hello Bob. So I'll quickly go over what this how this works again. So we are calling the get greeting method. So this is the method that we want to call. So we say get greeting. It does require a parameter. That parameter has to be a string. Alright, it has to be. So we create a new string and we name it Bob as first name. Then we pass in that string as our parameter. And then right here, it will get that parameter that we passed in. So we passed in first name, which is Bob. So name is going to equal to Bob. And then we're just going to add the greeting hello. And then we're going to do a plus name. And then we're just going to return whatever greeting that is. And then you can see we store as meta greeting and we print it out. This is very useful when you don't want to write the same code over and over and over again. So this is a pretty basic block of code, but if we have like a method that's like 50 lines and we want to use that exact same code, let's say at the very start of our program and then somewhere else at the very end, this will save us the time, so we don't have to write this code out 2 times at the start and at the end. We can just call it right here. So I can call this again, there's no problem. I can call this again. So I can call this again. Obviously this has to be different, we'll just do 2. And then I can just literally print out this again, and you can do method greeting 2. And you can run this again. You can see we get it twice. We execute the same block of code 2 times. We do it here and then we do it here. We can't just do it like this. We can easily, we don't need to set whatever return output we get as a string. We can easily just print out whatever we get in here like this. See, we still get it executed twice. We don't even need this. We can have this as Peter, and you can see we get hello Bob and we get hello Peter. Even though we have that block of code once, we only wrote it once, but it's reusable code now. So that's basically it for methods. This was a very just quick overview of methods. They do get a bit more, they get a bit harder. So, but just remember, if we have this as a string, the parameter that we pass in has to be a string here. So, for example, we pass in first name, which is a string, it's Bob. So this is fine. And here we also have the parameter as Peter, which is a string, so that's also fine. If we try to pass in, let's say, an integer, let's say we pass in 25, you'll see we get an error because the parameter that we need has to be a string, but we are passing to as an integer. If we do want to pass it in as an integer, we'll have to change this to an int. Well, we actually don't have to. We can keep this as a string, but this one has to be an int. Because what we're going to do is we are just going to return int name. Okay, green int spelling wrong like that. Okay, so now we can pass in any integer now in here because this is an integer and this is an integer. So this will work fine. The returning anything that we want to return has to be a string. If we don't want to return anything, we just do a void, but then we don't need the return greeting. And then we also, if we want to return an integer, we can just do int. But now you can see we are getting an error here because we are trying to return a string, even though we say our return type is going to be an integer. So, only way to fix that is if we return the integer as an integer. Okay. So now whatever return we get is going to be an integer because that's what we set it here. So that's basically it for methods. As I said, they do get a bit more complex as we go along. So, but I will cover that in the next video. But I hope this helps you out on how methods or functions, depending on what language you use, work. So thank you for watching.